in the woodshed with Night Danger. The summer's approaching its end. September is just around the corner at this point, and I want to take stock of what have I been up to this summer in gaming, and more importantly, what have I learned? There's been two kind of hobby activities that have been dominating most of my time and energy as of late. The first being a game of Copperhead County, which is a Blades in the Dark variant for doing a Breaking Bad style crime in the South sort of game. My players are the Vanderveer family, family of moonshiners in southern Tennessee, up against the newfangled drugs of heroin and cocaine and methamphetamines. It's hard out there for an old-fashioned illicit substance peddler. So there's been that, and then the other thing is I call it Not Godstein, an ongoing game of play-by-post world building where we are using a variant of the Dawn of Worlds rule set that was cooked up by Mike over at Living Earth Gaming Club, and we're using those rules to make a setting for OD&D and Chainmail, and that has been very fascinating for a number of reasons that I'll get into. I think I'll talk about what I've learned from Copperhead County first, and then we'll talk about what I've learned from Dawn of Worlds. Yeah, we'll just see. Someone made fun of me in the comments of my last video about using my thumb, using my finger to tamp my pipe. So I ruffled through the pockets and I found my tamper. Actually, there's a funny story with this, and it's my channel, so I can tell it. This tamper was given to me by my brother for Christmas a couple years ago. What he did is he bought like a really trashy, kind of not horny, but that kind of an aesthetic, clearly written for women, like mystery, true crime, thriller novel, and then he cut out on the inside and put the tamper in there. But so I receive books for Christmas, generally speaking. Like anytime anybody asks me what I want for Christmas, I give them a list of potential books, what types of books. I like books. And so he hands this book and I open it and I don't recognize the author. I can very clearly tell what kind of book it is. And he's like, yeah, you're really into detective books. You love like mystery stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to be rude. I'm like really trying to be enthusiastic and yeah, this looks interesting. I'll give it a read. And then I crack it open and I see that he's hidden this pipe tamper with a little, if you screw it off, it's got a little like pick tool for cleaning as well. Yeah, brothers are great. Anyways, we're going to see if we can keep this lit because it's been going out on me a lot lately. I switched blends and I like this new stuff, but I haven't gotten the hang of it yet. So bear with me a moment. So, Copperhead County. It's a Blades in the Dark variant, but it does a couple things differently that I like. And I'm not really going to get into the weeds about those mechanical changes because I know my audience and I don't think you care. So, instead I'm going to talk about what I've been doing differently from how I have historically run Blades. And they both have to do with downtime, which downtime is, I think, I'm realizing an underutilized aspect of how I run the game. So, the general cycle of Blades is you find a job or a heist or something that you want to do, and then you follow the procedures to like basically do a little bit of light planning and gathering information about that job, and then you do the job, and then afterwards you get paid, you take heat, like potentially get in trouble with the law, like fallout from that job, and then there's downtime activities where you can recover your injuries or improve your skills or whatever. And so what I've done this time around is I've shuffled the order. I've shifted it slightly. So instead, each session starts with the downtime phase and the fallout of the previous session. So we end the session at the end of a job, the end of a heist, the end of a whatever, and then we just like pause it there because we are on pause time for this, playing every week, and the following week, the next week, I do the downtime activities for the players at the start of the session, and then we move into like setting up the next job and then doing the job, right? So the first part of the session is the downtime. And this is where the other thing that I've done differently with downtime is, rather than it just being a series of buttons that you push to recover injuries and clear your stress and, maybe acquire some resources, instead of just having them tell me what they want to do and roll dice for success, I've been, based on some of the immersion stuff that I've been exploring, we've been playing the downtime, which is to say, a player says that he wants to do XYZ during downtime. I say, okay, so let's say he wants to clear some stress. He wants to go drinking, partying. I say, okay, well, where do you go? And we take like 2 minutes just to kind of set a scene, kind of get a snapshot of that downtime activity. And then, depending on how the dice play out, maybe an opportunity for them to make a couple skill checks and kind of basically seed ideas for future jobs out of that downtime activity. So a great example is one player. The dice dictated that some kind of personal trouble was going to happen to him. Some kind of a problem that was specific to his character out of his personal life was going to bleed over into his professional life as a criminal. So I'm like, well, what do you do for fun? What do you do to clear stress? He's like, I think I go drinking. Like, I go to a bar, I meet people, whatever. And I say, okay. And I kind of look at the tables and I roll a couple dice. I have a oracle that I'll use to kind of like jog ideas, like a word generator. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So you're out one night and you're kind of just taking a load off, clearing your head, and you meet somebody. And she's really nice, and you hit it off, but on the third or fourth date, maybe you find out that her mom is a member of this other crime family that you guys are at war with, and you didn't know because she didn't have the same last name, because her mom took the husband's name, and so this girl is not a member of that crime family, but she is directly connected to it. And this opens up a whole new, I say, what do you want to do with this information? You could, like, your character really likes this girl, but you could break it off for keep personal and professional life separate. You could try to conceal it from her. You could try and use her to gain information about your enemies. Like, what are you going to do with that? And over the next 2 sessions, he decides basically to lean fully into it and kind of undermine the trajectory of the gang to switch sides in this gang war and side with this girl's family instead of with the other organization that they had been previously allied to. They betrayed the group that they were working with in order for him to kind of pursue this relationship. It was and it's exactly that sort of like petty, selfish motives that drives a lot of great crime fiction. It was very, very in line with the Appendix N of crime fiction, your Dashiell Hammetts, your Raymond Chandlers, that sort of stuff. It was perfect. It worked out great. And it wouldn't have happened if I had just said, yeah, you roll some dice and you clear this much stress and, you partied a little too hard, you brought some heat down on the crew and just kind of moved on. By choosing to just sit in the downtime a little bit, I was able to pull out new threads of convergence, new threads of conflict and tension and drama and excitement that wouldn't have happened if I had simply mechanistically followed the downtime procedures. And I really think that this is relevant to kind of your heat engine model of an RPG, where I know that last year, actually almost around this time, like towards September, there was a lot of arguing about convergence and how much do you care about the individual actions of characters that aren't directly driving towards conflict, and how much do you lean into, like, there's the total nonstop Breinstein. There was all this discussion about, well, how much do you care about downtime if it doesn't directly feed into the conflict of the world? And by putting the downtime at the start of a session, what I'm doing is basically, to use a hockey analogy, I'm assisting. I'm doing an assist of setting up a potential point of conflict. I go through the motions of what would normally be kind of reclusive, almost solo, almost solitaire background stuff for characters, and using it to springboard new problems into the world that the players can deal with. And I think that you could apply this to almost any other game, like even spell research. Like, you think about the downtime activities of AD&D: training, spell research, recruiting. If you just spend a little bit more time actually role-playing through those downtime activities, there's so, like, think about how many things happen to you in a day. Like, even nobody's a perfectly focused workaholic who only does their desired task 100% of the day. If someone's doing spell research, they might be in their lab spell researching for 8, maybe even 9, 10 hours a day, but they're still doing other stuff. They might be going into town to collect ingredients. They might be referencing at if your game has a wizard's university or archives or libraries. There might be somebody who's trying to undermine his research. By zooming into the personal, you could take a downtime activity that would normally just be like, 2 weeks of time jail, you're out, and you can turn that into an engine of interest, an engine of exciting things happening. This is, and from a zero prep perspective, if you do your downtime at the start of the session, it means that the player has had these new interesting variables introduced to them, brought up to them. They've maybe encountered an NPC or had a positive or negative encounter with a faction during their downtime, and now it's fresh in their mind and they're right thinking about it right when you pop into the adventuring portion of the session, the non-downtime stuff. This is, I think, what I want to explore more in, like, a more conventional or traditional RPG like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, because, how do I put this? My favorite Appendix N fiction is not Robert E. Howard. It's not Conan. It's not Lord of the Rings. I like Fritz Leiber. I like the Lankmar stories. I like the Dying Earth stories, like the Jack Vance. And those stories are very small scale conflict. They're very personal. They're very, what's at stake is very rarely the fate of the whole world, but rather the fate of my wallet for the next 2 weeks, or the fate of my viable employment for the next couple weeks. And that kind of very low stakes, very zoomed in sort of thing, as opposed to the massive expanse of empires and armies and all of this, is just, that's the fiction that I like. That's the world and the fantasy that I like to hang out in. And I think it might be a really viable way to re-inject one-to-one time for my particular table. Because my players are the same way. They like getting in with their characters. They are ultimately fairly immersive guys. And they don't want necessarily to be, from a very gamist perspective, simply moving around multiple different pawns over various objective markers. They want to be in the world. And so by not hand waving and not gliding over huge sections of downtime, and instead digging into it. I think that it will resolve a problem that many of my players had, is that they didn't care for time jail. They weren't interested in running a huge stable of characters. And this isn't I'm interested in only playing my one specific type. They all try different things. They'll play different classes, they'll play different archetypes. They're okay with character death, they don't mind all that. But it's like, while they're playing that character, they want to play that character. And by zooming in, time jail concerns become less weighty. They matter less, because on any given, if you're meeting every week, on any given session, the odds that you are going to spend like 3-4 weeks of in-game time in a single session is very low. You're much more likely to spend only 5-6 days of in-session time, maybe 10, and you can just roll those last couple days into the downtime at the start of the next session. And so, in terms of working for the club that I have going, I think it is potentially a very viable way of integrating one-to-one time into the table. We're going to be experimenting with this in October, when we kick off a game of Demon City, which is going to be, I'm very excited about this, the most one-to-one thing that I have ever run, because it is a game, it will be in one-to-one time, and it's going to be set current day in our home city. So it's not just that the game world moves at the same speed as the real world calendar. It's rather the game world calendar and the real world calendar are the same calendar. It's one-to-one local events, one-to-one local weather. And because we all live in this city, and all of us have lived in this city basically our entire adult lives, if not our entire lives into childhood, it's also one-to-one familiarity with local landmarks and rumors and areas and neighborhoods and notable figures. The Demon City game is going to be the most one-to-one that I have done to date. And a big part of that is that Demon City has integrated downtime procedures for recovering stress or calm or whatever it's called, and recovering hit points and training new skills and improving your character. And all of that happens in downtime procedures, which, based on my experience with this Blades of the Dark game, I'm going to be trying as much as possible to have downtime occurring at the start of a session, as opposed to in between sessions, or quickly resolving it with a couple dice rolls at the end of a session. Making downtime part of the experience itself. Downtime and adventuring time being a continuum of the same experience, as opposed to like two discrete modes of play. Like in the way that, for example, combat is kind of a discrete mode of play in like Pokemon or a JRPG, where you're playing one type of game and then combat happens and you're playing a different type of game. I'm interested in potentially, especially for an investigative horror game, smoothing the continuum of experience between downtime and active adventuring. Yeah, so that's been really interesting. And this is the longest running Blades game that we have. We started back in March, and I think we're on session 10 or 11 this coming week. And I suspect it's going to continue at least until the end of September, and it might even push into October a bit. However, this is a complaint I have about Blades, because of how character progression works, the game starts to break down from a power scaling perspective once you break about 12 sessions. So, all this to say, the two things I've learned from running Blades is that downtime is actually best done as a immersive role-playing experience, at least for my table, as opposed to a hand-waved set of mechanical procedures. And also that it's best to do it at the beginning of the session as a way to kind of prime the pump for the exciting stuff. And it's reduced my cognitive load outside of session, because I'm not sitting thinking what are they going to do next week, or they said they were going to do this next week, and how am I going to make that happen? Instead, what we have is the players figuring out what it is that they're going to do that session while they're actually playing the game, while they're going through the downtime procedures. And I'm jotting little notes and pulling little threads. So that's what I learned there. And now I'm going to move on and talk about my Dawn of Worlds game. But first, I'm going to get this going again because it continues to elude me. And my mouth's a little dry here. I'm on an indefinite hiatus from alcohol for a little while, just for some various health reasons. And but this is I've been exploring the non-alcoholic beers, and most of them are only okay. But this non-alcoholic Guinness is very, very, very close to the experience of a regular canned Guinness. And I think a big part of that is that Guinness is already a fairly mild beer. It's a weaker beer. It's not a particularly boozy beer in the first place. And I got to tell you, on a hot day, it hits the spot. It's nice. All right, so let's get this going while I recenter my thoughts, and we'll talk about my Not Godstein, which is approaching the end. So, there's been a couple things that I've noticed about this, but the big thing that I really want to take away is patrons and running faction level characters with weekly orders. Last year, when I ran Jungleberg, which was my first foray into the Bro SR style of gaming, I did weekly orders that were due on Wednesday, and then on Saturday I would send updates of how those orders resolved so that people could then start to think about what they were going to do for their next round of orders the following Wednesday. And it was a lot of fun, and it was some of the best gaming I've ever run, and it was so much work. It was so much. I was putting probably anywhere from 15 to 30 hours, depending on the week, of outside game session resolving of downtime and faction stuff and patron orders. And I could do that because I was in university and my schedule was extremely flexible, and I could resolve orders while listening to lectures and that sort of thing. But now that I'm working again, it's just not viable. So when I went to do this Dawn of Worlds thing, which the original Dawn of Worlds is written as a game that you just basically play live. You get together and you just like make a world in one day, like in a single day. And what we did instead is we spread it out into once a week play by post, where each week you, instead of every couple minutes submitting another turn and updating the map, the players have been submitting their actions as gods creating and shaping this world over thousands of years, with one set of actions each week, one set of orders each week. And the two things that I'm finding are different with this versus the patron orders in Jungleberg is, one, the players are working with a finite set of resources, points. They have points that they can spend on given actions, and they only have so many of them each week. And they can save them, they can bank them between turns, and but we did have to implement a policy where you have to spend at least 1 point a week. You have to do something each week, because there were people who were doing nothing for weeks and weeks on end, sometimes for personal reasons, like for strategy, like the hoarding points for some potential future big thing, or as just because like life is busy and you can forget, and then you fall behind and you get into like this feedback loop of, I'm behind, I need to catch up first, and then the next week comes around and it's like, oh, I haven't caught up yet, I'm still behind. And so, but by enforcing just please do at least one little thing every week, Don't feel like you need to keep up with everything that's going on. Just worry about doing something. To do a suboptimal thing is better than doing nothing at all. But what the points have done is they have reduced the... they've basically eliminated Adderall wizards from my game. And what do I mean by that? It's eliminated the tendency of a certain type of player to give highly Byzantine, hyper-detailed faction orders that are a huge pain to resolve and also very difficult to balance against because it's just so much, right? Like, it's like, how do you and so the Adderall wizard, like, the idea that it's every faction leader is a perfectly focused workaholic on Adderall who's just like accomplishing a bajillion things every single week. And instead, it's just you have this many points, and different actions have different costs, and so bigger actions cost more points. If you do something big, then you're not. And that's really worked in terms of reining in the overwhelming scope of faction activity. And it's been really fun because sometimes you just say, my god founds a new city. And now there's a new city on that. And then other times you create a new race and you write up some lore. One guy has been writing dwarvish poems, like epic poems, to describe the actions of his god. And so it's an opportunity. People who want to do like world building as a creative exercise are free to do so, but they are not actually mechanically rewarded for simply writing more. Writing more is something that you do for the love of the game, because at the end of the day, the points are what they are. The actions are what they are. And so if you're really burnt out, you can just spend the points and say what the action is and move on. But if you've got some free time or you're really excited, then you can still pour that enthusiasm into the creative process, and that still has a positive effect on the game, because other people read them and they get ideas and they can pull on those threads and they can respond to them, and it gives you that dynamism without it being without the playing field being shifted to whoever is the sweatiest. Like whoever has the most free time and invests the most just automatically wins is just not the case, because again, everyone kind of gets an average. The points are generated each week on 2d6, but everyone basically has roughly the same amount of points each week, and everyone has roughly the same amount of available action each week. And so the higher level of investment is pro-social without being game-breaking. It doesn't flatten the game, but it does improve the game. And that's a subtle difference, but an important one. A really wonderful difference. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be carrying through into future games with patrons, is working out a set of standardized action types with point costs and simply allotting points, because it seems gamier, but it has had such a wonderful effect on mitigating the worst impulses of patron-style always-on campaigning. And the other thing that has worked out really, really nicely is I'm not taking orders on a simultaneous deadline. Something that happens if you read Tony Bath's Ancient Wargaming, is he talks about the pros and cons for a tabletop wargame between simultaneous resolution of actions, like written orders and then simultaneous resolution, and turn-based, I go, you go, I go, you go. And I know that some people really love the simultaneous action, and it makes the fog of war more dynamic, but it is much more difficult to execute, and it's more taxing, especially if you have, 7 participants. And I found that with my Junglebird game, is it became very taxing to resolve simultaneous covert actions every single week in an always-on fashion. But what we've done is it's turn-based, in that each week is one turn, and each day of the week is a different person's turn. So my turn is Sunday, and then after this I've got to write up my turn for tomorrow because I'm going to be busy tomorrow. But my turn is Sunday. My brother, he submits his orders on Monday, and I receive them and I immediately reveal everything that is to be revealed. Sometimes the players, they keep secrets and I know about them and they get revealed when is appropriate, but anything that would be public information simply gets dropped the day that I receive it. And then another guy on Tuesday and another guy on Wednesday, and so on and so forth. And it hasn't so much affected the cognitive load for the players because, or at least I don't think it has, because my players are still processing what they're going to do each week. Like, they're still focused on what they're going to do, and they can pay attention to what other people are doing, but often it's hard to keep up with the chat always updating. So for them, it's basically the same. I figure out what I'm going to do, and then I submit it. Now, they don't have to stress so much about nickel and diming every possible variable of their actions the way that they did with the always-on patron orders in Jungleberg. But it's kind of the same for them. But on my end, it is so much easier to resolve and work out the consequences of a single player's action in about 15 minutes each day on my lunch break or when I get home from work or whatever, than it is to try and collate and resolve and then release information for 7 different sets of orders every Saturday. Instead of sitting down and mulling through all this information and then sorting it and updating it in a single sitting, I'm just once a day posting a little thing, reading a quick little thing, and then posting it. And it by spreading it out, you lose a little bit of the fog of war. Everything's a compromise. But we've been doing this since March now. So it's August. What is that? Well, it's a good long stretch of runs, and it's been going weekly basically the entire time. I think there was 1 week or 1 or 2 weeks where we paused because I had a baby, and then I was on vacation. But even when we paused, they had little things that they were doing during that paused week. This is also, I think, how I will be handling patron and faction stuff in the future, is just spreading it out. Not giving people, even if the patrons are more discreet, more fog of war, more covert, spreading it out. So my brother's deadline being Monday, and then my godfather's deadline being Wednesday, and it really feels like I have cracked the code for myself on making patron play, long-term ongoing patron play, viable, because it's just less work, or at the it's the same amount of work. If it's 15 minutes a day, it's still a couple hours a week, but it's not me having to set aside a 3-hour block or 2.5-hour block on Friday or Saturday. Instead, it's just 15 minutes a day, and that's huge. In the same way that that's true of almost any hobby. I've started translating that to other elements of my life. So now, instead of I really should practice my guitar this week, I'll have to find some time when I can sit down and I can really drill for a couple hours. It's no, just at least once a day, pick up the guitar for 15-20 minutes. Read a book for 15-20 minutes. I've gotten through way more fiction since I started playing this game because I realized that hobbies are just easier to engage with as a working guy with kids in little doses more frequently than in large doses less frequently. How you do one thing affects how you do everything. And that's obviously a huge lesson that the Bro SR has been working through for several years now. Yeah, no, it's been a very productive summer. I've learned a lot, and I think it's going to improve my games across the spectrum of game types. So, what's on the horizon for Night Danger in the fall and into the winter? Well, obviously, I'm going to finally run Demon City for my table, which I'm super stoked about. It's going to be like I'm going to really just be maximizing how much juice can I squeeze out of the 1-to-1 heuristic, and then when we're done with that, which could be just for the month of October, it might be just a little thing. Sometimes horror games are best in shorter bursts than long bursts. I find long bursts, it can start to become bleak. Or it starts to transform from a horror game into like more of an action adventure game, which is to say, at some point, it stops feeling like Angel Heart or The Ninth Gate, and it starts feeling like Hellboy uh, or Supernatural. Eventually, the characters both the players and the characters get numb to the horrors, and it becomes much more about just like defeating horrors in an almost more blasé sense than it is about like wrangling and grasping the horrors and all that. And I don't mind that. And so, but we'll see. We'll see how long. We'll see how Demon City plays at the table. Whether it works. How does the character progression feel? We'll figure all that out. And when we're done that, one of two things will be the case. Either A, the Gods game. Well, the Gods game will probably have wrapped up at that point. We'll have concluded the creation of the world. And either A, I will have compiled the information and all the races and lore and factions into something that I can run the game from, and we'll start playing OD&D with Chainmail, or potentially I'm considering Lamentations of the Flame Princess with Hellmarch. I haven't decided yet, but Lamentations is a game that I love dearly, and the BX model is popular for a reason. It works. It does what I need it to do. It doesn't do everything that AD&D does, but it does what I need it to do. But on the other hand, I do love Chainmail. I do love six-sided dice. So we'll see. We'll see what I run it with. So either A, I will be ready to start running in this world that we've created, and we can frolic in all the madness that we've created. I might see if I can get some of the players who are comfortable showing face to come on with me. Maybe we can do an episode talking about the game, like an aftermath, an after-action report for this. Oh gosh, by the end it'll be like March, April, May, June, July, August, potentially September, 6-7 month experiment. We'll see. Or maybe I'll just talk about it without them. We'll find out. But if I don't feel ready to run in that world, I think that I've been listening to the Gotrek and Felix series, the Warhammer Fantasy audiobooks, and my brother and I have been playing a lot of Vermintide. I think maybe we might try playing Warhammer Fantasy role playing, because probably first edition, because it's something I've thought about for a long time, and I've always avoided pulling trigger on it because I don't generally love D100 systems, and I don't generally love skill-based systems, but I guess you don't know if you like a game until you play it, until you actually try it. So either we'll be playing in our Gods Created game, but if the Gods Created game is not ready yet, if I'm not prepared, if I'm not ready to run in it yet, then yeah, I think we'll probably do Warhammer. And obviously I think even if I don't love the system, I'll probably have a good time doing that, just because there's some real love for the Warhammer Fantasy setting at my table. A couple of the guys there are very into it, so I think we'll have a good time. It's been a productive summer, and yeah, No, things are really good. Things are really good. It needs to rain. We're in a drought right now here in my part of Ontario. Like, there's warnings about like you're not allowed to run your sprinkler right now because you can, and we accidentally did deplete our well like enough that our water shut off. Like it's dry right now, so we need some rain. But the fall is coming, and things are so good. Life is so good, and I hope life is going good for you too. Uh, I think I'll stop here now. This might be the longest video I've recorded in a hot minute, but this has been Night Danger in his woodshed, and I'll talk to y'all later.